There are moments in American muscle car history when a small company, without deep pockets or giant engineering teams, decides to rise and see just how far it can go. For most people, the horsepower war belonged to the familiar giants, GM, Ford, and Chrysler. An American Motors Corporation was often seen as the outsider, a small name trying to survive among Detroit's giants. But sometimes, the underdog delivers the most unforgettable punch. You will not find AMC badges filling modern streets, yet in 1970, they built a machine that carried a rebellious heart. A car that did not ask permission to exist, it simply stepped forward and declared, "Be warned, we can fight too." And that is how the rebel machine arrived, like a clenched fist thrown at everything Detroit thought it had already defined. You know, late 1960s Detroit was basically a giant barbecue. Everyone showed up with their best dish. Pontiac brings the GTO, Chevy strolls in with the Chevelle SS, Mopar shows up like a guy hauling 2 briskets at once, tossing a Charger and a Roadrunner on the table. Everybody bragging about horsepower. Everybody louder than the next guy. And then AMC walks in. Not like a big shot. More like that neighbor who shows up with a tray of sandwiches but acts like he brought a whole smoked hog. People look and go, huh, AMC made it. But AMC does not flinch. They watch, they grin a little, and whisper, "All right, watch this." In 1969, they dropped the SC Rambler with Hearst. Small car, big attitude, looks like a high school kid, wearing an American flag jacket, marching into the state wrestling finals. A 390 cubic inch V8 under the hood and styling that basically yells, "Yeah, I came to play." If you look at the Rebel machine for the first time and think, "Oh, just another coupe," then congratulations, your coffee has not kicked in yet. This thing walks out like it is asking the whole neighborhood, "Who wants to try me first?" Low nose, wide stance, and a serious face that makes people step back just a bit. But the real difference lies in that hood. Not a gentle bulge. It rises like an athlete taking a deep breath before a punch, with an air scoop big enough to stash a baguette in there if you felt like it. And right behind it, AMC mounted the tachometer on the outside of the scoop. Who needs to look through the windshield, right? They put it where the other guy sees it first, as if saying, "Yes, I rev high. Anything you want to say about that?" And the paint? Do not expect European elegance. The first version looked like somebody grabbed the American flag and just pasted it straight across the body. Red, white, blue, and absolutely unapologetic about being loud. Other cars tried to be polite. The Rebel machine looks at you and says, "Buddy, I was not born to blend in. I was born to get noticed." Then you get to the 15-inch Kelsey Hayes wheels. Back then, many muscle cars were still on 14-inch setups, but AMC basically said, "We play bigger." Goodyear polyglass tires wrap tight around them, and you can tell immediately this thing does not like sitting still. Every line on the body looks like a gym-trained muscle flexing under skin. It is not the handsome gentleman type. It is the face of a seasoned brawler. Rough, strong, full of confidence. Now pop the hood, because this is where the Rebel machine finally shows you what it really is. Under all that paint, decals and attitude sits a 390 cubic inch V8, and AMC did not do anything halfway here. We are talking roughly 340 horsepower and 430 pound-feet of torque, numbers that were very serious in 1970. No turbo, no modern supercharger, no computer nannies, just gasoline, air, and the kind of confidence that says, blink and you are behind. On top sits a Motorcraft Autolite 4-barrel carb ready to dump fuel like pouring espresso for someone who has not slept in 2 nights. A free-flowing dual exhaust. Press the throttle, and it sounds like a steam locomotive waking up in the suburbs. Not polite, not gentle. It roars like it wants the neighbors to know you should have warned them first. But where does that power go? And here is where AMC grins and says, "You think we stopped at the engine?" The Rebel machine came standard, with a Borg Warner T 10-4 speed manual. No extra charge, no timid options. You want real power? You shift it yourself. The shifter clicks in tight, sounding like a volt locking. You know you are operating a real mechanical machine, not an electronic suggestion box. If you were not that brave, or just wanted to cruise, you could get the 3-speed automatic, but that is like ordering a burger without cheese. Sure, you can do it, but you are skipping the best part. Out back, a limited slip differential and 3.54 or 3.91 gears bite the pavement like weightlifting shoes digging in. And if you truly believed you were born for drag racing, dealers sold a 5.0 gear set. Choose that, and your insurance guy might call to ask if you have your will ready. On the quarter mile, the Rebel machine could clock high 14s. For a full steel car weighing over 3,600 pounds with zero modern electronics, that is enough to wipe the grin off plenty of faces. You feel the power through the wheel, the pavement, and your spine. At this point, you might think the Rebel machine's 340 horsepower was already enough to earn respect. But hold on, AMC had one more trick, and it was the kind of move only real car guys appreciate. They offered a dealer-only performance kit, affectionately nicknamed by enthusiasts as a budget ticket to the speed underworld. For about $500, you got a box of parts worth at least another 100 horsepower. That is right, a full extra 100. No shiny badges, no glossy brochures. Just raw performance hardware straight from the engineering bench to the parts counter. Once installed, the car could run the quarter mile in the high 12-second range. And in 1970, doing that with a full steel 3,600-pound car and zero computer help was serious business. The kind of power that made competitors chuckle at first, then stop laughing after the first pass. If AMC had released that configuration directly from the factory, the Rebel machine could have claimed the title of fastest muscle car of its era. But instead of plastering it on billboards, AMC treated it like a quiet secret shared among the people who really got it. And there was more. Rather than building marketing displays and hype banners, AMC quietly stocked even more performance parts for drivers who wanted to turn this car into a true drag strip weapon. No glittery brochures, no cheesy slogans, just a subtle nod that said, "You know what to do." Now step inside, and if you walked in expecting plush leather seats, glossy wood trim, and soft ambient lighting, you are in the wrong room. The Rebel machine was not built to take you to a 5-star dinner. It was built to drag you to the start line, and maybe drag you past it if you do not hold on tight. The cabin feels less like a luxury showroom and more like a boxing gym. Simple vinyl seats, gauges and switches placed exactly where they need to be. Nothing more. No decorative chrome everywhere. No warm glow begging you to relax. Everything speaks one language. This car is for driving, not posing. A big steering wheel with real weight to it. Straightforward mechanical gauges, easy to read. No dramatic lighting tricks. And despite the car's aggressive spirit, the interior has a strange sense of discipline and purpose. Nothing sloppy, nothing lazy. Everything is there to serve one mission: go fast and stay in control. While other muscle cars tried to sweet-talk buyers with comfort and convenience, AMC stripped away the fluff. Rebel machine buyers were not hunting for luxury. They wanted connection. They wanted to feel the engine, the tires, the road. If they wanted a soft couch, they'd stay home and watch TV. If they were here, it meant they preferred a V8 soundtrack over the hum of an air conditioner. But the world was already shifting, and that is where the tragedy begins. In 1970, the muscle car world still had fire, but the wind was turning. Insurance rates for high-performance cars spiked. Emissions rules loomed. Buyers started caring less about peak horsepower and more about gallons per mile. And AMC, without the advertising war chest of the big three, simply could not shout loud enough. The Rebel machine stepped onto the stage full of power, attitude, and authenticity, just as the audience began heading for the exits. Not because it lacked capability. The rules of the game were changing. The GTO, the Hemi cars, the LS-era Chevys had shown the peak. Now, the curtain was closing. Only about 2,326 units were built. That tiny production run is what makes the machine a treasure today. Not a car designed to sit pretty in a showroom. A real fighter that simply arrived a few rounds too late. You look at it and wonder, if this thing had shown up 4 years earlier, would we mention it alongside Super Duties and Max Wedges? Very likely. The Rebel machine did not lose the battle. History just called time first. But instead of quitting immediately, AMC made one more push. In 1971, they introduced the Go machine on the new Matador platform. It was almost a rebirth, adjusted for a changing era. Gone were the explosive red, white, blue graphics. Gone was the hood scoop shouting at the neighbors. The Go machine spoke quietly, dressed more modestly, yet it still carried the same DNA. Real performance for drivers who knew exactly what they wanted. The problem was that America no longer wanted to go fast at any cost. Operating expenses climbed. Insurance cracked down on high-power cars, and a movement towards smaller, more efficient vehicles had begun. The Go machine did not arrive wrong. It simply arrived in the final minutes of a fading era. It stood as a reminder that AMC kept swinging even when the outcome seemed decided. And with time, AMC stepped off the stage. No chaos, no bright farewell lights. A small company that once dared to challenge giants eventually bowed out as the industry marched into a new age. The badge disappeared, but the spirit did not. The proof is still rolling today. The name Jeep remains, a proud remnant of AMC traveling the roads of America. Today, when enthusiasts talk about the Rebel machine, they no longer see the late arrival. They see a gem of the muscle era, a fighter that refused to quit even when the odds leaned the other way. And that rarity has turned it into a collector's prize. With just over 2,000 units built and far fewer surviving, correct examples, especially in the iconic red, white, blue scheme, with a 4-speed, now command real respect at auctions. You do not see Rebel machines crossing the block every month. But when one shows up, the real car people pause, not because it is flashy, but because it represents that spirit of going against the grain without asking permission. Its value is not just steel and horsepower. It is the story. A small company throwing punches at giants with nothing but determination and engineering. If you have driven, owned, or simply dreamed about this car, share your story below. Stories like yours are what keep machines like this alive. And if you enjoy exploring emotional mechanical legends like this one, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There are many more icons waiting to be told, and you will not want to miss them.